I think that the main things that we need to make sure that you go away with today is an understanding of LinkedIn and how it works, what you can do to help the students complete their profiles, as well as what you can do for your own profiles and for AIMS, and also questions and the prizes. Now, LinkedIn started on the 5th of May 2003 and I joined on the 21st of December. I'm member number 77832 in the world. You can't tell anybody's member number now, they removed that facility. But there's over 8 million members in Australia, which compares to about 14 to 15 million on Facebook, and over 480 million members worldwide. For as many members that have joined, almost as many LinkedIn have deleted because they're spammers trying to get access to the LinkedIn platform. So LinkedIn really has to work hard to make sure that they keep the platform with a certain level of integrity. And by the way, I'm not paid by LinkedIn. I'm completely independent of LinkedIn. So I'm not here to sell you anything about LinkedIn, just here to help you understand LinkedIn. 70% of decision makers will also Google you. Now that includes the people you meet at a party on a Saturday night when they go to the bathroom and say, I'll just check this person out online. It also means people looking for jobs, and 95% of people will be Googled and checked on Facebook before they're hired. So, you know, the best thing about LinkedIn is that if you put someone's name in, it's likely to come up in the search results. It can also be your own personal black book, address book of all your contacts or your own cloud database for your network, because I don't believe there's any such thing as job security, no matter where you work. So, you know, you need to build your network. And also it can be search engine optimized for your keywords or skills. So some people can actually make their profile work just in Google. So if I said I was looking for a UX designer in Melbourne, I can actually put that into Google and you can optimize your LinkedIn profile to make sure it comes up. So it's a really nifty way to get content out there. It can also be a branding tool for either an individual or the enterprise. You can also publish on it. It's a recruiting tool. You can do research, you can do sales, you can do business. But I would suggest you really need to be authentic on LinkedIn. I find that there's a lot of hang-ups that people have about LinkedIn. So I figure, right, let's get them out in the open, put them on the table and help you understand what they could be. So a lot of people worry about their privacy, you know, who's going to forge my identity and so on and so forth. And I say, well, it is your past history. It's not I'm going to the US on September the 1st and here's my travel itinerary, come break into my house. You don't put that on, although there used to be a facility to say when you were travelling, but that's long gone. And if you don't feel comfortable about putting your mobile phone number, or your students don't feel comfortable about putting their mobile phone number on their profile, they can still just leave their email address. So that's another option. Although I do often make the joke, when you go past a real estate signboard and you see a mobile phone number, do you have this compulsion to ring it? You know, not normally. So my phone normally only rings for people who actually you know, interested in doing business, because my message is really, really clear. And of course, if your students are looking for work, they want somebody to ring them. So, you know, it's in their interest to put their mobile phone number on their profile. You don't know who to connect to. Well, that depends on your purpose. So for me, running a network, the more people I'm connected to gives people more opportunity. So for me, I check out the profile first, and so long as they don't look like a spammer or, you know, somebody sort of just going to give me multi-level marketing information, I pretty much say yes to most people, because that improves my chances and their chances of coming up in search results. Does it take too much time? Well, you can say, well, what's the benefit to this? And obviously for most of your students who are looking for work, you know, they want to come up in search results and obviously get found. It's too costly. I'm still using the free account. You can't write. So for a lot of people whose English is their second language, they feel very uncomfortable. What should I say on my LinkedIn profile? And I say, look, most people are going to be looking at the profile on a tablet or a mobile phone, and they're just going to be scrolling. So a huge long sentence is going to be impossible for anybody to really read and understand. So for that reason, just use dot points, and the shorter the better, 5 words or less if possible. If you're scared of computers, well, sorry folks, it's a digital world. My 97-year-old grandmother says, oh, I don't use computers, but happily uses the FPOS machine at the checkout. You know, she doesn't realise that's actually a computer. So, yep, don't worry, we're in the world. Worried about their English? Well, you know, you can all partner up and get people to check one another's profile. I see so much bad English, I don't even notice it anymore. So, you know, seriously, I don't mind bad English, but I do like to see a good attempt. So, you know, a mistake here and there is no big issue, but I like to see that somebody's been genuine and made a real effort. You might say, well, I don't need a job, but you still need to have a network because none of us know how long it lasts, and you don't want to have a digital presence. Well, unfortunately, lots of other people expect you to have a digital presence. And the best thing about LinkedIn is you can determine what you have on it. So I do a number of presentations to Rotary groups, and they say, oh, we don't want any more inquiries. I says, well, tell them you're retired, and tell them that you're only interested in hearing from people tracing the family tree, or that you only want a consulting gig worth $5,000 a day. I mean, you know, you determine what you want there. And if you rely on referrals, well, up to 85% of business is still done by referral. So if I hear about Marg and everybody tells me Marg's fantastic, well, I'm still going to Google her and find out what comes up on Google to make sure that she really is fantastic. And even though she wrote her own LinkedIn profile, for some stupid reason, I'm more likely to believe it if I found it on Google than if my best friend tells me. This is common knowledge. People believe it when they verify it themselves. If you're going to work on LinkedIn profiles, it really is best if you don't use a tablet or a mobile phone because the experience is different. And the new LinkedIn platform is designed to look like the mobile phone, but it still offers more choices than the mobile phone app does. So if you're going to do updates, get people to use either a laptop or a desktop computer, not a notebook, because that gives the same experience as a mobile phone or a tablet. So the first thing you'd want to do is collect their statistics. And so you can see how many profile views you've had by going to that link, and all these notes are going to come out to you. So, you know, just add your own notes as you wish. You really need to get at least 60 connections. I encourage people to get 6 or more recommendations. Try and get 20 endorsements per skill eventually, and you can see that on your profile. And before I work with anybody, I always save their profile to PDF so that there's a digital copy of their profile before I start changing it around. So just in case they want to go back to what they had previously written, we've still got a copy of that. And I also like to get them to export their connections so that in the unlikely event that LinkedIn goes poof overnight, they can still get access to all of their connections, or if they do something really naughty and LinkedIn closes their account, they can still recreate it and get started again. And I recommend you do that every 90 days. So I suggest that if you want to be classified as active in the job search market, you'd want at least 100 views per 90 days. If you're getting less than 100 views per 90 days, you're probably not coming up in search results too often. The next thing that I encourage everybody to do is to change their public profile URL to their name, because if you don't change it to your name, it's harder to come up in search results, particularly if you have a common type name. And if they have a common name that somebody else has already chosen for their LinkedIn profile, then I encourage them to put a number on it, but not a number that can be confused with a letter. So sometimes 1 looks like L, so it's better to choose another number. Apparently, what's the unlucky Chinese number? 4. So I tend to avoid number 4s, and 8s are quite good, but they can look like a B. You know, you can go on and on and on. But yeah, try and get your own name. And add a photo. It's really important that people have a photo. 70% of the population is visual, and they will judge a person by the quality of the photograph. So there's an article that I've got on my profile about photographs, so you're welcome to check that out. And I also recommend a background image. So what I normally do is I paste the photograph on a big paint file, 1536 by 768 pixels wide, and then I use the paint dropper to pick a colour out of their photo and fill in the rest of the box so that the colour matches the photo. So just to give you an example of this, I'll show you one of my clients' profiles, because when you look at somebody's profile, see how the orange has been picked out of his colour, and it makes his photos stand out more. And the best thing about choosing a solid colour as a background rather than a picture of buildings or something else is when it scales down to a mobile phone, it still looks good. So, and it personalises it a little bit. So, yeah, so he's got orange, I've got others purple and green and all sorts of colours. So they look quite nice, and it just looks like it all is congruent. And also update their privacy settings, which I'll show you, who can see your connections, viewers of this profile, and complete as many sections. So let's go in and show you how those are done. So back under privacy and settings. Oops. So we go to privacy. Now, the first one is who can see your connections. So if you're the top CEO of AIMS, you probably don't want everybody to know who you're connected to. So you might choose here, only you. Or if the person was in a sales role, they don't necessarily want everybody else to know, who they're doing business with. So you choose only you. But shared connections would still be shown. But for anybody looking for work, I'd say make it open to everybody, your connections. This is the one that you really must change to no. Viewers of this profile also viewed, because the last thing you want is somebody to find your student and then look at somebody else who's also been looked at by other people, because that obviously, encourages them to consider somebody else for the position. So I definitely recommend you change that one to no. And the third one I get people to consider is this profile viewing. So this is the stalking tool. So if you've got a job interview tomorrow and you don't want the person to know that you're checking them out today, you can change yourself to anonymous, or you can look at your competitors or whatever, and then go and look at their profile. And even if they've got premium, no one will ever know that you looked at their profile. And then when you're finished, you come back and leave yourself turned on. And the reason you leave yourself turned on is so that you can see who's been looking at your profile. And I call that reverse stalking. And that's my favourite activity to do on LinkedIn, right? So, and the reason it's my favourite activity is because it tells me if my profile's working for me. So every time I log in, this is what I do half the day. I keep checking this screen. So who's looked at me? Who's looked? So this poor guy, he's looking for work, and he keeps popping up the last few days. So I hope he's updating his profile, but obviously that headline is terrible. That's not a good headline to have. It's got none of his keywords in it, so he's not going to come up in search results. And then 4 people have looked at me anonymously. So I can only see the last 5 people who've looked at me, but if I had the premium account, I would have the last 90 days worth of people who've looked at me. So if you've got students and they can track who's started looking at them, first of all it was their friends and family, now it's HR managers, decision makers and so on, they can really say their profile is working for them. So yeah, reverse stalking. And obviously complete as many sections as humanly possible. That's really, really important. So, I say this point, don't tell, can't sell. If I meet someone in person, I'm much more likely to consider them for a job, because I get to sort of feel what they're like, I get a vibe as to whether I'd like to work with them or not. But when somebody's trying to be found on LinkedIn, you've only got a 2-dimensional screen, 1 photo and text. So it's really difficult to really understand that person's value unless they explain their value. So it's really important that it be filled out. So you need to start with the person's purpose and use the keywords that the person is trying to use to find them. So I spoke at the Career Development Association of Australia conference in Adelaide a couple of years ago, and I did a little search on LinkedIn, and I thought, well, if I was looking for a career help, what would I put in? Career Counsellor Adelaide. And not one of the people who, even those I was connected to, came up in my search results at the time, because none of them called themselves career counsellors. They all called themselves career development practitioners. Okay? So you've got to think about the mind of the decision maker for your clients. What are they looking for? So if it was somebody, who was in IT, a few years ago, all websites had to be usable. It was all called usability. And then it became user design and user experience, UX, CX, customer experience. These are all terms that are used by recruiters or decision makers looking for someone with that type of experience. So yesterday I saw another article that says HR should be called PX, people experience. And I thought, you know, there's going to be continually more and more acronyms added to this sort of thing. So you need to help your students find out what are the words that people are going to be using in their particular industry. And then when they've got those key words, you need to make sure that they're put throughout the LinkedIn profile in multiple sections. And the number one spot is the headline. They need to be in there frequently, and the person also needs to be active on LinkedIn. So if they only log in once, tidy up their profile and do nothing, nothing's going to happen, because the algorithms that LinkedIn use, the mathematical equations, the machine learning tools, whatever, says this person's not really in the job search because they never log in. So, you know, they need to be active. And when somebody actually finds their profile and starts looking at it, the photo has to match, you know, their expectations. The headline has to, the summary has to be easy to read, has to be consistent. There has to be a call to action, you know, it says, you know, currently interested in roles in, you know, put that in for them. There has to be a little bit of bling, some videos, some images, some PDFs, something like that. If they're going to put a video in, make sure they watch it right to the end, because there could be some terrible thing right at the end. So do that. And don't put too many photos on. There was one South African guy who sold machinery, and he had a picture of practically every piece of machinery that he'd ever sold throughout his LinkedIn profile, and then he looked like a try-hard. So, you know, don't go overboard, but definitely have some of that in. And then once it's filled in for both the computer to find the person and then the person reading it to like it, you then determine what strategy and tactics will work for your students. So for instance, I had one lady who was an executive coach, and she worked with school principals and senior leaders in private schools in Melbourne. So one of her strategies could have been to participate in LinkedIn groups with other coaches. But all she's really going to get out of a LinkedIn group is more advice on coaching. She's not necessarily going to get any clients from schools. So in her case, I suggested that she'd be better off writing an article about coaching in schools and having that on her LinkedIn profile, because if somebody found her and read that article, that would give her more value for the time she spends than just participating in a group. So, you know, you need to help people work out what's going to be better for them to use as their tactic for getting work. I wouldn't recommend paying for premium over December, January, because nobody's looking at the LinkedIn profiles anyway. But also, there is absolutely no point paying for premium until the profile's been updated. So if it's not updated, there's no point. They're not going to come up in search results. If they're a UX person and they don't put UX on their profile, doesn't matter whether they pay for premium or not, they're not going to come up in search results. And then after they've done all this, if they're really ambitious, I encourage them to write other publications. So my children, I've bought their domain names, and they're going to have to pay me a lot of money if they ever want them back. And I also encourage people to write articles, and Open Forum is really receptive to opinion pieces. So one of my clients, he's in Sydney, and he has a view on corporate social responsibility. So what happens is, if you Google his name, there's his LinkedIn. He's an actor, so he's got a profile on there, and here's his details on Open Forum. So page 1 of Google search results, and all he ever did was write one article, and quite some time ago. Also, industry associations, if they're not already a member, they really should consider becoming a member of a professional association. While they're at AIMS, they may also be able to qualify as a student member, which in some cases is free of charge. So my daughter did study at La Trobe last year in animal and veterinary bioscience, and we found out that the Australian Veterinarians Association has free student membership. So she can automatically put that on her LinkedIn profile under memberships and under certifications, and she gets their nice logo on their profile. Really adds some gravitas to her profile, even though she's only, you know, just straight out of uni. And also you've got to remember that there are a lot more people who are not interested in working for the man full-time normal job. They want to be entrepreneurs. So if that's the case, they absolutely really do need to have a LinkedIn profile so that they can be found online. But the three main areas that will reflect what they're going to be found for is your photo, headline and your summary. So they're the three ones that really have to do it, as well as the current job title. So they may not currently be working, but if they're looking for work in that area, then they can put that in so that they'll come up in search results. So it's just a dumb, stupid database. It doesn't realise that the person's not actually in the role. It just says they're looking for roles. So you could put it in there and it's still going to come up, in search results. So definitely you can do that. And then they need to say, the types of things they're interested in. Another thing that they can do in their education section is if they list all the subjects, but some of the topics included some of the things that they'd like to move into, they could also write topics included and put some of those keywords in there as well. So you can actually do it. Now, I never recommend that you lie, but for example, people who've been incarcerated won't say that they were in prison. They'll put the name of the holding company instead and say that they were chefing and studying and doing whatever, which they were. They obviously have to disclose it when they get to an interview stage, but to even come up in search results, they do things like that as well. So there's plenty of ways that you can massage the message with LinkedIn. When I first moved from Adelaide to Melbourne, I had a 10-page resume of my 11 years of career in Westpac and all the different jobs I did. And then I thought, look, the first thing I actually want to do is just some temp work. So I reduced it down to a 1-page resume, leaving out all the interesting things I'd done and said I'd done filing and admin and blah, blah, blah. Well, I had 4 phone calls in one day. So if your purpose is just to get a job to pay the bills for now, then yes, dumb it all down, save it to PDF and, do that. But if you're looking for something plus what your ultimate goal is, I would always suggest still stay with the ultimate goal on LinkedIn. Okay, so if you're going to search engine optimize someone's profile, once you've got their keywords, you've helped them determine what their keywords are, you need to put it in the headline. You've got 120 characters. And if you look at my LinkedIn profile, you'll see I've got 1 comma and spaces, nothing else, because I want to have as many of my keywords that could possibly help me get the type of work I want in my LinkedIn profile. So I don't put slashes, either or, because if you put a slash between 2 words, the stupid computer will join the words together. So there's no point putting a slash. So I just put a space between each word. Don't worry about it if it doesn't look like perfect English or sounds sexy or whatever. The most important thing is to have your keywords in your headline. Next thing is in your current job title. So the person might be called a UX manager, but then they can put dash and put all their keywords in after their job title, because that is another key location for search results. Then in their past job title, in their summary and in their education and in their experience. So for every job that the person has done previously, or you for your profile, you would start up with a description of the organisation. AIMS Australia provides blah, 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 established in 1951, whatever. The tasks that you do in your role, your achievements, and then the URL. Now, although it will be text on the screen, on an Android phone, that will be a clickable link. So people can quickly go straight through to the organisation and say, right, let's look at it. Because a lot of people see the logo next to a job, but they don't click on it. Whereas if they see a link, they know, oh yeah, I can click on that or I can copy paste it. So really good for branding to put the link. And particularly if they're working in some foreign country who've never heard of the organisation before, if we've got the link straight there, we can go and have a look and see what that particular organisation does. They will also get bonus points if they connect with others, because obviously the more people you're connected to, the more second level connections you have, which means the more likely you are to come up in search results. And this is really important with the new layout, because the functionality of search has actually been dropped significantly. So if you're not connected to as many people, then you're seriously going to suffer in search results. So really important that they get connected. If they start endorsing people, that can also be helpful because then their details can go in front of other people. So that's when you see the skills and you endorse it. So there was a group of engineering students straight out of uni who all endorsed each other for engineering. Now, if I was the HR manager, I'd say, what? You know, just come straight out of uni, that doesn't look really right. But something that's changed with endorsements recently, if somebody who has that skill endorses you, that's really worth extra brownie points. So if you can get their old managers who are really skilled in it to endorse them for it, that can help. If they publish an article on LinkedIn, LinkedIn will notify some of your connections. Previously they used to notify everybody, but now they only notify some of the people. If you recommend others, you might end up on somebody else's profile. So if you write a recommendation for them and, you know, somebody looks at their profile, that can show off to your student or client. If you view others, and this is a really great cold calling technique. You know, there's only about a 5% success rate with ringing up people, but if you keep looking at people's profiles, there's a 30% chance they will then look at you. So that's a really good tactic, particularly for the more introverted people. One guy just kept looking at somebody over and over and over again. So the guy eventually said, would you like to work for us? And the guy said, yes, please. So yeah, you know, just even looking on a regular basis. And by the way, if all of you look at me, I'll be super excited. I won't think you're stalking me. I'll say they're doing their homework. So I'll be super excited if lots of people from AIM start looking at my profile. If you follow a company. So for example, the National Australia Bank, they target candidates who are already following the National Australia Bank. So if your clients want to work for particular organisations, get them to follow that company on LinkedIn, and also get them to like, comment and share content. So if you're just liking or commenting, that's good, but if you share the content, that's really worthwhile for you. So I recommend that they check out whatever it is they're wanting to share, make sure they've read it all and checked it all out, but like, comment and share will give them the best bang for buck from the news feed. So more premium strategy. So again, you don't have to pay any extra money for this, but if they do this, they're also going to help complete every section of their LinkedIn profile. Now there's two sections I haven't completed. One is patents, although I'm thinking of getting a patent just so I can fill it in. And the second one is their personal details, which is their date of birth. As an ex-banker, no way do I recommend putting your date of birth on anything. And the second thing that the personal details request is your marital status. Now, I've not known my marital status to affect my ability to do a job, so I don't include that. However, there's been a couple of young men who want to travel, and I've said, put down that you're single, you know. Well, they were single, of course, because that meant they might be more likely to pick up that type of work. So if it's advantageous to the person, then obviously, you know, put it in, but for everybody else, leave it off. So there's two sections I haven't completed, but all the rest have been done. You also need to explain transferable skills. So I've done some work with Ford, Holden and Alcoa, all leaving the country. And there's a guy there called a grip test engineer. Does anybody know what the grip test engineer does? I didn't think so. So obviously, if that person just says, I'm a grip test engineer, nobody's going to have a clue as to how that is transferable. But if he says a grip test engineer measures the ability for the car to remain on the road in unusual circumstances, so that's tyres, grip, you know, suspension, weight of the vehicle, aerodynamics, blah, 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 then all of a sudden I can say, well, that guy or girl has got plenty of skills that are completely transferable over to something else. But if you don't explain what a grip test engineer does, I'm never going to know that. Stay on purpose, but you can change later. Tell the whole story because the screen is two-dimensional, and make it memorable. So one of my clients had to fill in key selection criteria for a job at the National Gallery, and as a tour guide. And they wanted to know if she spoke any other languages, which is probably fairly useful, being a tour guide at the NGV. And she didn't, but she could lip read. So we said English and lip reading. So it's not a language, but it makes her completely memorable. Where's that candidate who can lip read? You know, so it's something we all know what lip reading is, but if it was in the profile, it just makes that person stand out. And I've been in recruitment, and after you've interviewed 10 people for the day, you don't remember number 1 or number 4 or number 6. So, you know, one candidate I remember, he wore carrots on his socks, so I called him Carrot Socks. It was just easier to remember him by carrot socks than it was by anything else. So, you know, get some people to put things that are memorable in their profile. So, you know, one guy, he loved flying hot air balloons. And I thought, wow, you have to be really smart to fly a hot air balloon. And again, it's memorable. You know, put a picture of the hot air balloon on. And another guy was a diver. You know, you have to be really competent to be a diver. So, you know, put it on there. Ask for information. So this is a really big problem with some international arrivals. They think that they jump through 60 million hoops to get a visa and permanent residency in Australia. And then they think, oh, well, you should just give me a job. And of course, you know, I get really upset when people just assume that I'm ready to give them a job. But if they ask me for information, I'm quite comfortable with that. So please encourage all your students to ask for information or referrals, not just a job. Encourage people to seek a mentor or accountability partner to stay focused. So if you're not sure whether you're going to update your profile or not from today, pair up with somebody in the group, set yourself a date, and make sure you work together to try and get it done before then. You can search engine optimize it effectively, just remembering that algorithms can change. So when the LinkedIn layout changed recently, I had my summary written in a particular way to make it really impactful. Now, only the first 2 lines appear. I think, oh no, all that hard work in my summary, nobody sees it unless they click see more. So now I have to think about what's the 2 lines that are most important and probably change my summary to match it. So you've got to keep on track there. Being active is important. It's now featured. So if you look at someone's profile, it says, what have they been doing recently? So all your students are going to have to show, you know, that they've been liking, commenting, sharing or something, and also be responsive. So if they get a message in from somebody, LinkedIn is tracking, or most of the platforms now track, how long does it take to respond to that message. So keep that in mind as well. So if they end up paying for premium, you get 1 month free, but it's like a gym membership. After the 1 month, they keep charging your credit card unless you tell them not to. So they've got a diary if they only want the 1 month free, and I suggest they go for it for that 1 month. They'll be able to get in-mail so that they can message people directly. They'll appear higher in search results, and they'll be able to do more searches. They will be able to search beyond level 1 and 2 connections. They'll get more comprehensive analytics like 90 days of who's looked at them, you know, where those people came from, how they found them. They'll be a preferred candidate when applying for jobs, so they'll go on the top of the list of, you know, job searches or job applicants. Prestige, well, if they can afford premium, they must be doing okay. So there's that perception there. And also they must still have obviously focused on their purpose and making sure their profile matches the computer and user experience before they bother paying for premium. Some people think, I'll just pay the money and that'll solve the problem. It doesn't. It varies depending on what you have, but I think it's usually about $45 plus per month, which is, you know, if you get a job worth $100,000, who cares? You know, it's fantastic. But, you know, when you're not earning any money, that can feel like a lot of money, and it builds up fairly quickly. So how can you guys measure how you've helped your students? So first of all, you could say, all right, folks, we're going to write down these statistics at the beginning of the course, and we're going to check it again at the end of 10 weeks. What has changed? So how many sections have they currently completed on their LinkedIn profile? How many completed after the 10 weeks? How many connections did they have at the beginning? How many connections did they have at the end? How many views per 90 days were they getting? How many at the end? How many recommendations have they got? How many at the end? How many skills and endorsements and votes for those skills and endorsements? How many leads they've got? How many people actually contacted them? How many jobs they applied for? You know, you can go on and on and on with statistics. But the bottom line is they have to take responsibility for their success. They can't assume that just by coming to a course, it's going to happen. But if you as an organisation start collecting this information, you can track how well you're performing and you can report back to the board or whoever and say that, you know, our students start off with this and by the end of the program they end up with that. That's a tangible outcome we've actually been able to prove as a result of them participating in the AIMS program. So now for your profiles. So obviously I don't know what AIMS would like to focus on, so I'm just using the one I did for NetExpat as a sample. So with NetExpat, I'm a senior consultant training and coaching expatriate partners on job search, LinkedIn culture and, local culture and LinkedIn. So I describe the organisation, I talk about the tasks I do there, my achievements and my contact details. So I would recommend, and also I've put in a bit of bling, a reference to their Emma's Award win as well. So you guys could all have a sort of a pro forma as AIMS staff that you end up having as a recommendation. So AIMS would suggest this is the way we want you to describe the organisation. These are the keywords we'd like you to focus on. It's still your profile, so you have the personal choice as to whether to do it or not. But if if AIMS can provide that suggestion for your LinkedIn profile, that's one way to at least get one section completed. Your main purpose, whatever you're about, what you want to be known for, is photo, headline, summary. Those three sections, you know, this is who, what's your name? Daniel. Dan is, right? This is the guy, right? But in terms of coming up in search results, either within LinkedIn or within Google, you have to repeat the keywords in certain locations. So the number 1 spot is your headline, the number 2 spot's your current job title, number 3 spot's your past job title, and then it goes through education, summary, experience. Because you've got to remember, it's just a dumb, stupid database. It doesn't have the ability to read between the lines. So unless you repeat that information, it says, well, this person wrote it 64 times and this person wrote it 3 times. Therefore, the 64 times person is obviously more skilled in that area than the person who wrote it 3 times. Okay? So, yeah, that's why I get people to repeat it. This one. Keywords in the headline, current job title, past job title, summary, education, experience. So that's the main places to put it. So then what happens is not only will it be found within LinkedIn, but it can also be found in Google. You always get to choose how you prefer to do it. So if you want to use first person, perfectly fine by me. But don't use the word I too often. I. A typical Australian doesn't like hearing about that. But also when you use the word I think about me, but I'm reading about you. So therefore there's a bit of a disconnect with the brain has to make an extra connection. So the way I see it, if you write in the third person and I'm reading about Dan, well then I'm thinking about Dan, not about me or I or whatever. And the other option is you can choose no person, completed, done, X, achieved, and you use no person. But then you're not going to search engine optimize your own name. So that's another reason I consider using the third person. So you choose whichever option you like, but just be aware that they have, you know, pluses and minuses, whichever way you go. Some people say that the third person is more impersonal, and it's obviously your profile, so why would you want to write in the third person, you know? So I always recommend to people, if they're looking to work for a particular organisation, check out to see if they've got a jobs page on LinkedIn, but also check out the careers section of their website as well. In terms of the social media that gives the most bang for buck, my choices are LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and Google+. And Google+ is one of the most important because when I publish content on Google+, it tells Google that I published it. So it gets it indexed in Google search results. Okay, so based on what you've learned today, what can we help Jacqueline with?
The photo.
Her photo. Why?
I like the garden thing. It looks really nice. Actually, my garden.
Right, but it's a personality thing, so it helps you remember Jacqueline because of the beautiful garden. Yep. What else?
I've got a slash in my...
You've got a slash, so that's going to join your words together.
And I've written in the personality.
Yeah. Now, there's one thing I'm going to suggest that you take out. 14 years. Okay? Now, I'm 51 and proud of it, and I don't want people to perceive me as out of date. That's why I tell you I go to between 1 and 4 events per week. And I went to a presentation at the University of Melbourne last night with some expert professor from NYU Stern, wherever that is in the US, talking about ageing and work, right? Now, people who are older, we apparently have to conform, otherwise people don't like us. So if we start looking cool and hip, they don't like it. If we start using, if we start making it look like we're a drain on society because we're always sick or we've got a bad back or, you know, whatever, that's no good. Or we've taught for 14 years. Or we've got more money and we're taking it away from them, okay? So we have to convince people, according to this professor, that we're not going to take their money. We are competent, but not too competent, you know, like so on and so forth. Anyway, what my issue is with 14 years is I remember when I was in my 20s and recruiting people, and I remember thinking anybody over the age of 30 is ancient. Now I'm 51. I'm actually prehistoric now. So if you have a nice 20-year-old looking at your profile and they see the word 14 years of experience, plus 12, oh my goodness, oh heavens, you must be ready for the grave. So leave out years, right? It's completely irrelevant, right? But if you tell me, I've taught in primary schools, I've taught adults, I've taught English, I've taught in 3 countries, my goodness, Jacqueline, you're a guru. Okay, completely different slant. So remove all references to years of experience, completely gone. Just talk about skills. Now, the next thing is, who would like to read this sentence on a mobile phone? It's probably going to take about 5 scrolls, okay? So that would be a lot easier if it was in dot points. Taught in, now you've used AMEP and you've used that, which is great. So you've got the key words in again. English levels 1, 2 and 3, a tutor trainer, online resources, teaching at work skills. Right, okay. Now this is all about your work, but there's nothing about you personally. Now you're a keen gardener and blah, blah, blah. So, you know, you could do something like that to perhaps make it more referenceable. Now, you've got 2,000 characters you can put in here, and you've only got, I don't know, 500 or something. Yeah, so you can definitely put more in there, because what you'll notice now is only the current job is described, and all the other ones you only get the title and this. So really make a bit more of an effort to fill in that in a bit more detail. But also, Victorian Department of Education. Now, I'm quite sure they have a company profile on LinkedIn, so you need to type the words to find it so that the Department of Education logo comes up on here instead of just what you typed. Yeah, I know, so don't worry about that, just whatever it is for the moment, just keep changing it, but then you can say taught in these schools, just adds a bit more colour and flavour to it. Deakin, you should obviously have the Deakin logo there, so that should be there, and all your subjects. And same with Latrobe, same with Holmes Clan, junior coordinator. Academic transcripts can be retrieved, so do that. Language, even if you did French at school, I put it in. I did French for 5 years, so I've got French on mine.